There was once a man who was reading a book about magic, not sleight of hand or stage magic, but the real thing. And it got him to wondering just what is the greatest magic of all. He knew of a hermit living in the forest who had a reputation for wisdom, so he went to visit him and asked the old hermit, "What is the greatest magic of all?" The hermit replied, "I can't give you the answer to that, but up in the mountains is an old Indian woman, and she can answer your question." Well, the hermit gave directions, and the man drove off up into the mountains till eventually he came to a log cabin, and there was an old Indian woman waiting for him there, looking as though she was expecting him. "I've been told that you can answer my question," he said. "What is the greatest magic of all?" "Yes," she replied, "I can answer that question, but before I do, let's have a cup of tea." And they went into the cabin and sat down, and she began pouring a cup of tea. Then as she was pouring it, an earthquake hit, a big one, the kind that goes on for a little while, and the back of the cabin began to disintegrate. The man became terrified, and he ran out of the cabin and jumped into his car and began to drive away, but a tree fell in front of his car, so he turned around and drove the other way. Trees were falling and boulders were coming after him, miraculously missing him, but he drove out into the desert, and after a couple of hours he began to calm down, his fear subsided, and he realized that he was lost. What's worse, he was running out of gas. But he looked over on the horizon, there seemed to be something, and he drove towards it, and the closer he got, he saw that it was a gas station. And as he got even closer, he saw that it was a gas station and a convenience store. He managed to get in basically on his fumes, but there was an Indian couple waiting for him, again looking as if they were expecting him. And they said, "Welcome, we've been waiting for you. Tonight you're marrying our daughter." And he was like, "I only came here for gas." But then the daughter came out, and she was quite attractive, and he thought, well, I'm not doing anything for the next couple of days. So he stayed, and that night there was a wedding ceremony, and he stayed with his new bride, and the next morning everyone, including the parents, had left. There was just him and his new bride, and they now owned the gas station and convenience store. It turned out that this was something of a crossroads in the desert, and the place was fairly busy and quite successful. And so he stayed, and the days turned to weeks, to months, to years, and they had a couple of children, and one evening he was sitting on the front porch thinking of how his luck had changed and everything had worked out so well for him, when a big limousine pulled up, and a famous movie director stepped out. And the movie director looked around and said, "This is perfect. Do you own this place?" And the man said, "Yes, sir, as a matter of fact I do." And the movie director said, "I will pay you $1 million if I can have exclusive use of this place for 3 days, just for 3 days, to film my movie." And the man said, "Sure." And the director said, "Fine, I'll be here tomorrow with the money and with the contracts to be signed." So that night the man went to bed, thinking of all the good fortune that had come his way. and how he had a beautiful wife, wonderful children, a successful business, and tomorrow he's going to be a millionaire. And he closed his eyes and went to sleep with those happy thoughts. And the next morning he opened his eyes, and there he was, still in the cabin, with that Indian woman still pouring the cup of tea. She looked at him and she said, "Now that is the greatest magic of all."